We're diving into a phrase I bet you've heard before.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world, it seems like that's all we see.
It's everywhere.
It really is. So in this deep dive, we're going to uncover the origins of this phrase and how it's woven itself through media history.
And its impact on our minds.
Yes. And maybe most importantly, we'll explore how we can all become smarter consumers of the information that is constantly being thrown at us.
We'll see if we can figure that out.
So to kick things off, where did this whole if it bleeds, it leads thing even come from?
Well, the roots actually go all the way back to the late 19th century.
Wow, really?
Yeah, think like the newspaper wars between William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. They were battling it out for readership, and their tactics gave rise to what we call sensational journalism.
Sensationalism.
Which was a style of news that was less concerned with accuracy and more focused on just selling papers.
So basically just trying to get people to buy their newspapers.
Yeah.
And I guess headlines that screamed about crime and disaster that was effective, wasn't it?
It was very effective. It turns out our fascination with the dramatic, maybe even the morbid, is nothing new.
Yeah. We've always kind of liked that, haven't we?
Indeed. This era demonstrated a fundamental truth about human nature. We're wired to pay attention to threats. It's a survival instinct that probably served us well in our evolutionary past.
Right.
But in today's media landscape, that instinct can be easily exploited.
That makes sense. But you know, it's interesting. While the concept has been around for over a century, the exact phrase, if it bleeds, it leads, is attributed to an article from 1989, critiquing local TV news.
So the evolution of language itself kind of reflects how this whole concept has adapted and thrived in different media environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of different media environments, the 24/7 news cycle and the internet,
especially social media algorithms,
they've just dramatically amplified this phenomenon, haven't they? It's crazy. Now, anyone with a smartphone can contribute to this cycle of sensationalism. It's kind of like a democratization of information, but also a diffusion of responsibility.
That's a really good way to put it.
So much power is in the hands of individuals now. It makes you wonder if the audience even bears some responsibility for the prevalence of this if it bleeds, it leads thing.
You mean like, are we complicit in our own anxieties?
Yeah, we'll have to unpack that. Let's maybe start by considering the psychological effects of constant exposure to negative news.
Okay. So think about how you feel after scrolling through a social media feed filled with stories of conflict, violence, tragedy.
All of that.
All the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I know when I do that, I often feel just overwhelmed, anxious.
Yeah.
Even a bit hopeless. Like, the world is a much more dangerous place than it actually is.
That's a very common experience. You're definitely not alone. And there's actually a name for that. Mean world syndrome.
Mean world syndrome. Yeah. It's the feeling that the world is more dangerous than it actually is, and it comes from being heavily exposed to negative news. There's also headline stress disorder.
What?
Yeah, which is a form of anxiety that's fueled by the constant barrage of alarming headlines.
That makes sense. I mean, our brains haven't really adapted to this onslaught of information, have they?
Not at all. It's like we're constantly on high alert, which is incredibly draining.
It really is. And it's almost like these ancient survival mechanisms we have are being hijacked by algorithms that are designed to keep us engaged.
And nothing keeps us glued to our screens like a good dose of fear and outrage.
It's true.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from this cycle? How do we reclaim our attention and maybe more importantly, our peace of mind?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is.
Well, I think the first step is awareness. Recognizing that there are powerful forces at play here and understanding how they influence our thoughts and emotions.
I can see.
We need to become more conscious of our media consumption habits and the impact they have on us.
So it's like being on a diet. But for information, we need to be mindful of what we're feeding our minds.
Precisely. Instead of mindlessly scrolling through a newsfeed, be intentional about the sources you choose, the information you consume, and the time you spend engaging with it.
So diversifying our media diet is key.
It's crucial.
But what are some practical steps we can take to break free from this negativity cycle? So diversifying our media diet is key. But what are some practical steps we can take to break free from this negativity cycle?
Well, one concrete step you can take is to curate your social media feeds.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Take a look at the accounts you follow and think about the content they share. Ask yourself, do they consistently evoke feelings of anxiety or negativity?
I see.
And if so, you might want to consider unfollowing them.
Just get rid of them.
Or at least muting them.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. It's easy to get caught up in that outrage cycle without realizing how much it's affecting us.
It really is. And it's also important to be wary of those clickbait headlines and sensationalized stories.
The ones that are designed to trigger our fear response.
Exactly. Because remember, the goal of a lot of media outlets is to capture our attention.
Not necessarily to inform us.
Right. So we need to be a little bit more critical and really question the motives behind those headlines.
Like, what are they trying to get us to believe or do?
That's the question. And another thing you can do is try to limit your exposure to the news,
To take a break.
especially during times of heightened stress or anxiety.
That makes sense.
It's okay to step away from that constant stream of information and just focus on things that bring you joy and peace.
It's like hitting the reset button on our minds.
Exactly. You're allowing yourself to step away from all that noise and reconnect with what really matters.
Okay. So limit exposure, take a break.
And then when you are consuming news, make a conscious effort to seek out diverse perspectives and high-quality journalism.
Support organizations committed to ethical reporting and fact-checking.
All of that good stuff.
This is where critical thinking really comes in. We need to evaluate the sources of information we're consuming and consider their potential biases and agendas.
Absolutely. Look for evidence-based reporting,
Balance perspectives.
a commitment to accuracy.
Don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions.
And look for information that might contradict your existing beliefs.
It's all about broadening our understanding of the world.
And recognizing that there's rarely a single right answer.
And you know what I just realized? This whole if it bleeds, it leads
Yeah.
phenomenon.
It's not limited to news media.
Right. It also plays out in our personal relationships,
In our workplaces, even.
even in our own internal dialogues.
It's everywhere.
That's a really interesting point. How does it show up in these other areas of life?
Well, think about a time when you shared a piece of gossip or a negative story with someone.
Okay.
Did you notice that it seemed to grab their attention more than if you had shared something positive or neutral?
Now that you mention it, I can definitely think of times when I've been drawn to the drama.
Even when you knew it wasn't necessarily productive or helpful.
Exactly.
It's a natural human tendency.
But one we can learn to manage.
By becoming more aware of how if it bleeds, it leads operates in our personal lives, we can start to make more conscious choices about the stories we share and the energy we cultivate.
This has been a powerful reminder that if it bleeds, it leads is so much more than just a media phenomenon.
It's a deeply ingrained human tendency that we all need to be aware of and actively work to counteract.
By understanding these psychological forces at play,
We can make more mindful choices about the information we consume,
the stories we share,
and ultimately the world we create for ourselves and others,
it's about taking back control.
of our attention, our emotions, and our perception of the world.
The power to shape our reality lies within each of us.
And we need to use that power wisely.
We've spent this deep dive really unpacking this idea of if it bleeds, it leads.
A phrase that's become almost like a mantra.
In today's media landscape especially. We've explored its historical roots, its evolution in our digital age.
And its impact on us.
Yeah, on our minds, both individually and collectively.
It's really fascinating.
But I think more importantly, we've talked about how to break free
From this grip.
from this pervasive phenomenon to become more conscious
More discerning.
about the information we consume.
Absolutely.
It's about reclaiming our attention, our emotions, and our power to shape our own narrative. The big takeaway, I think, is that we have a choice in all of this.
We really do.
We can choose to be swept away by all the negativity.
Or we can swim against the current.
Exactly. We can be passive.
Or we can be active.
We can just take in whatever comes our way.
Or we can be critical thinkers questioning everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Question the motives, the agendas behind those headlines.
We have to remember if it bleeds, it leads is a powerful force. But we can learn to navigate it.
We can even subvert it
The future of media and really the future of our society depends on the choices we make.
as individuals.
Each and every one of us.
So are we going to continue to be drawn in by all the fear and outrage?
Or will we choose to cultivate a more balanced view of the world?
The power to shape the narrative.
It's in our hands.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about,
Me too.
and I hope it's done the same for you.
I hope so.
Remember, the power to change the world starts with changing ourselves.
Let's be the change we want to see.
Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive.
Into a topic that matters.
Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Deep Thoughts Podcast. I hope you found insights and inspiration to take with you on your journey of self-growth. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on new releases and exclusive content. See you next time, where we'll continue to help you grow and explore your full potential.